Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the Eternum Labs podcast. Today I bring you a very special guest, Chef Pete Evans. In this podcast, we talk about healthy living, healthy eating, and of course, self-belief systems. If you like this podcast, please make sure to follow, like, and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I did. Thank you, and see you in the next one.
Welcome to the Eternum Labs podcast. We interview the world's leading experts on longevity, health, performance, sleep, and cognition, and share their findings with you, helping you have more energy, feel better, live longer, and perform at your peak. Now, let's get into the episode.
G'day, Pete. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure, Corey. G'day, everyone who is out there either watching or listening. Hope you're having a wonderful day or night, wherever you are around the world.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for taking the time to come out onto the show, Pete. I was reading your bio just beforehand, and I did not understand like how much stuff that you actually do, like, and that you've done. It's crazy. Like, it's not just like obviously all the other shows that you've done, but I didn't even know you had that SBS show that you've been hosting for a while.
PBS.
The PBS, sorry.
So
Yeah.
That's all right. I haven't got the SBS show. You never know. You never say never, but we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey so far, and sometimes I feel like it's just beginning. Sometimes I feel like I want to slow down. Sometimes I feel like I want to speed up. So, and this is what it's like. It's about finding your balance, and day to day is different for everybody. You know, some days we feel more energetic. Some days we feel like we want to just chill out. And I have been very fortunate to have to create a life and manifest a life that has had a lot of variety in many different ways. That has led me to this point where I am now, and accumulated a chunk of wisdom along the way, and continue to be a student of life, and at the same time happily sharing information that I deem to be useful and practical and solution-based for anybody that is wishing to learn more about what it means to be human. And sort of my underlying, over the last 10 years, my intention has been to learn as much as I can and to embody what long-term sustainable health means, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's a pretty big intention, I tell you, because there's so many pillars to this, and I'm so excited about this intention and this study, because it will be eternal. And that way we can stay in I don't want to say position, but stay in an environment of curiosity and an environment of wonder, and a place where we don't know the outcome to everything, which I find fascinating. That's the magic of being human, is the future as it unfolds in so many wondrous ways. So I'll probably finish that right there, and that might lead us into some questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, firstly, it's like, how did you what do you do in terms of to learn all of that and to embody it? Like, how do you actually, like, what are sort of the practices, or like, what are your inputs would probably be the better question, to actually learn and like go down that path and try to embody it as well and share it?
Yeah, it's really simple. As I just mentioned before, it's having a sense of curiosity.
Okay.
And a sense of wonder, and a sense of wanting to understand more about ourselves. It comes back to understanding who we are first and foremost. And how do we do that? We go on an adventure or a journey and seek knowledge. How do we seek knowledge? We have all these different tools that are available to us now. You know, once upon a time it was, and it still is, it's trial and error. And every species works this out. You know, they work out what works best for them to continue their evolution.
Mhm.
And I do believe we're in a pretty remarkable time in human history, because we have so much that we can access from all around the globe, all around the world, as far as different philosophies go. And every single culture, every single country, every single tribe that has ever existed has gone on the same journey of trial and error and discovery, and handing down this wisdom through, whether it be through storytelling, through verbal, whether it be through dance or song or ritual or initiation, or whatever it may be, trading of information with other tribes, other communities, as we've evolved. And we're still at that point. We're still discovering more and more, as we see with quantum physics, for instance, as we see with the spiritual realm, as we see with so many things these days. They're all starting to intertwine what was considered mystical and sacred information, and perhaps even woo-woo many, many years ago, now is being validated with the latest science.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Some of the things that we thought were scientifically proven and validated, that's with nothing will ever shift this understanding of reality, because the scientific method has proved that this is truthful and factual. What we're seeing now is those understandings and truths are being pulled apart at the seams, and we're witnessing that in especially over the last 18 months, where anybody has to be questioning science, and at this particular point in time, because science is a continual evolution of gaining more knowledge, doing more experiments, hypothesis, and coming out with an answer that then can be challenged and debated and proved wrong or right, and that continues on. And that's a beautiful thing. And I love science, except we find ourselves now in a society where we can't even question certain science, and that just seems so hypocritical and so dangerous, that if we haven't learnt anything through our evolutionary history, it's that everything should be questioned with an open mind, with a curious mind, with intelligent conversation, intelligent debate, and continually wishing to evolve our understanding of ourself and our connection to this reality in which we inhabit at the moment. And as I said, that's a lifelong journey. It just seems that lately some people have decided that they would like to stop the journey in certain areas of discovery, and I think that will come back to bite them in the very near future.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. I like sort of the hero's journey methodology, and sort of, how you obviously go down to the cave, you slay the dragon, slay the giants, kill Medusa, whatever it is. And it's always like what's sort of put out there like what I see commonly, because I coach a lot of entrepreneurs who sort of like want to start investing like within themselves. And the goal that people always get on the hero's journey, I find, is always some sort of value. It's always some sort of virtue. It's always some sort of wisdom, philosophy, or something internal that they have then used, that they can use as gold, which comes out as like a skill, whether they're sharing knowledge or information, and it's just like helping other people. But whatever that is, like there's obviously, I believe that everyone has like their own little like piece of gold that they get to once they actually reflect on themselves. So like I find what you're saying like really true as you're saying that, for sure.
Yeah, and that all comes down to a choice for those people that come and see you and ask for your advice or guidance or wisdom or knowledge that you've self-cultivated through your own curiosity, through however many years or perhaps even lifetimes of discovery, of evolution. And then, it's it's this ongoing journey, the hero's journey. I mean, I think we're all in a hero's journey once we incarnate in this reality, until we tap out or evolve to wherever we choose to go next. And but yeah, we're here to remember, we're here to learn, we're here to understand, we're here to connect, we're here to love, we're here to feel, we're here to grow, and again, we're here to evolve. And that can be all of those things that I just said can be very triggering and very challenging for people, because some people would like to have a very easy path. And what does that mean? In a relation to being human? Because if you look at the natural world, my wife and I actually this week have been watching a great series, and it's called Tiny World, or
you're back now.
Tiny. Was that me or was that you?
I'm not sure. One of us. It cut out for a second, but we're back.
Well, we've been watching this wonderful little documentary series called Tiny World or Tiny Planet, and it just shows the small little creatures that inhabit this earth. They do an episode in a garden, they do an episode in a meadow, they do an episode in the desert, they do an episode in the rainforest, they do one on the reef, they do one in the wherever. There's 12 episodes, I think, and we've watched them all, and they're freaking awesome. And the thing that always comes back to me by watching these, and I highly encourage people to watch nature documentaries. Don't get too caught up in the narrative, so to speak, because sometimes there's an agenda being pushed by certain presenters or certain networks or certain production companies that are trying to emotionally hook you into a certain narrative to make you feel a certain way about some sort of impending doom. But if you can watch these documentaries with curiosity and what can you learn from it, the thing that always jumps out to me is things are in perfect balance and harmony. These species have evolved to live in a symbiotic relationship to a degree, but at the same time, it's fucking brutal out in nature. It's life and death every single day.
Every second too.
There's something trying to eat something at all times and eating it alive, right? And when you look at the world like that, whether it's bacteria or fungus or virus or whatever it is, or species, it's a pretty wild place. And there's beauty in that wilderness and wildness. Yet human beings have created this, and I'm guilty of it myself. We've created this philosophy that everything needs to be easy, comfortable, non-challenging. As long as I can sit down and watch like I said, watch the Netflix of a night time and be warm and eat whatever I want to eat whenever I want to eat it. And if anything disrupts that,
any resistance,
whoa, it's like whoa. And I do believe, one of my perceptions over the last year and a half is that we're going to be given an opportunity once again to reconnect to our wildness, to reconnect to nature. And I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but when people have asked me over the last year and a half, how are you dealing with this? What's your advice? I go back to those fundamentals that we see in these nature documentaries. What are the most fundamentals for life? Food, water, shelter, safety. When did human beings step away from those three things being the most important factors? And there's love and connection, but when did those things become
forsaken?
Not our priority anymore, because every other species, that's their priority. That's survival. And where I'm seeing what's happening going is we are going to have an invitation. We are invited right now to reconnect to who we are.
Yeah.
Are we wild and free?
Mhm.
Every other species on the planet that hasn't been domesticated, because human beings are domesticated animals. If we are, if that is at our core, at our nature, that we're wild and free, how are we going to experience that once again? And if you look at certain aspects of what the genders are rolling out, it seems that we are going to be plunged into an experience where we may have to look at those three things very, very, very closely and reprioritize our life out of comfort to necessity and survival. And it can happen at the flick of a switch. It can happen from natural disaster. It can happen from A, B, and C. Who knows how it's going to happen? But I do have a feeling that it wouldn't be a bad idea to prioritize those things once again.
Yeah, well, I always think that, like, for people that I coach and people that I study and some of the texts and things that I read, is like it's very easy to take it for granted when you're so distracted all the time. And I find that when I'm talking to people or coaching with people, is bringing people back. Like when they first start, we focus on like a primal sense of health and do everything that we sort of can within someone's like I'd say comfort of being able to like just select like really healthy food, like go to a market and buy food from like an organic market, and actually just researching and having a look. I think like especially in Australia, we are so ridiculously blessed. I would say even like gifted. We literally hit the jackpot that like I can go to a market and get like the best quality like olive oil, like Manuka honey, whatever it is that has all of these amazing benefits, which are literally going to heal our bodies. And I find it just so fascinating that like no one's taking from majority from what I see is that there's a lack of people that don't take advantage of it from like people that I know. And it's like, oh, if you only knew how good this is, rather than eating KFC, you just got to like make it yourself. Literally helps people once they start doing these things. They start focusing on the next thing. It's like, well, once I've got like this sorted out, now I want to help other people do this, and I want to spread the message like elsewhere. That's why, like, I guess I'm like co-director of like Eternum Labs and all the other things. Is like, we really focus on sort of the ancient wisdom and the primal stuff first, because we like absolutely love that. I just find it fascinating. So like, it's just, and that's why I like learning things, as you're saying, being curious about them and having wisdom and new philosophy is like, just as a baseline, because obviously you have all that food knowledge because you've been a chef for like your whole life. So like you really get it. And yeah, when people just notice like just a few little different ingredients and different things, it just blows my mind. They're like, oh my gosh, I ate this and it makes me feel amazing. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, my wife and I have just opened a health retreat out the back of Murwillumbah. We take 6 to 8 guests at a time for a weekend, and we do cooking retreats. So we teach people how the principles of paleo, keto, or low carb cooking. We also do wellness retreats where we bring in different practitioners and take people through a weekend of introduction to wellness. So we do breath work, ice bath, hiking. We do great food, obviously. My wife and I cook, and yin yoga, acupuncture, body work, and something else. It'll come to me. And we're also doing, starting summer, we're doing fasting retreats. And again, it's these simple practices and simple lifestyle choices that, as you mentioned, a lot of people may not be aware of. And it brings us back to those nature documentaries, because every single species on the planet knows what to eat for their long-term sustainable health. Every single one. And we have a species now called the human race that most westernized populations have very little idea of how to keep themselves healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we have currently a so-called pandemic in place that the health experts do not look healthy, probably have no idea of how to stay healthy for long periods of time or long-term sustainable health as a human being, yet are dictating policies and sharing information through the mainstream media and through their government organizations of what is best for you or me or anybody listening to this or the greater public. Yet I'm yet to find one of them that has spoken any truth in how to maintain a healthy immune system or how to look after a human body. I mean, all you need to do is look at the government-based food pyramid or food chart. The food pyramid was 10, 20 years ago. Now they've replaced it with a food chart, healthy eating chart, that is promoted by the dietitians associations or the Heart Foundation. And you can see that it is corrupted science, going back to what we started with at the start. None of it makes any sense. It's completely a lie, or many lies. It's actually causing people to become sicker because they're relying on that advice because they were taught that at school. They have to implement those guidelines in jails, hospitals, daycares, schools, as I mentioned, and everywhere, aged care homes. You wonder why aged care homes were the first to fall in this arena, apart from the forced and mandatory pharmaceutical interventions that happen to people in those homes. But even worse than that is the food that they're served in those places. High carbohydrate, low nutrition. That whole healthy eating guideline is a recipe for illness, for chronic illness. So how can we have a situation where human beings are supposedly the smartest species on the planet, except for dolphins and maybe a few other things, but we still instinctively don't know what to eat? If that doesn't make you ponder and question the reality in which we find ourselves, because when we go back through history, and we don't have to go back too far, or if we take our perception and our focus to hunter-gatherer tribes that still live a traditional lifestyle, they know exactly what to eat. There was a fellow called Weston A. Price and his wife back 100 years ago that traveled the world, studied indigenous cultures. I think they studied 30 or 40 of them over a 20-something year period.
They studied a lot of Australian Aboriginals too.
They did. He did, or they did. And what they found, no chronic illness, no type 2 diabetes, no cancer, no depression, no anxiety. None of these chronic illnesses. Perfect teeth, perfect jaws, big smiles. And they knew what to eat. They knew instinctively, intuitively, because it had been passed down. Now we live in this Western world where I was at a supermarket a few weeks ago. I was down at Jindabyne, actually, which is near Thredbo, a skiing village. And I had to pop in there to get some meat. And it was really fascinating because there was everyone was wearing masks, and I just walked in there without a mask. And I'm always a little curious because I very rarely go into supermarkets. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to observe without judgment. Just looking around and just seeing everybody, and they've got their masks on. But more frightening is what's in the trolleys. It's not food.
That gravy pack, that gravy chicken schnitzel pack that you got in there is not going to serve you. The movie with what's that movie with Matthew McConaughey when he gets AIDS? I remember that was a very
Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes, the Dallas Buyers Club. So
I haven't seen it, but I'll go with you here.
Yeah, so basically, just one of the things that obviously you recognize. What I thought just had a little moment for myself in my own mind when I was watching it was when he had the Dallas Buyers Clubs and he was trying to help himself when he figured out that he got AIDS and he needed to get better, and he was being extremely desperate and doing everything that he could to get the drugs to help him get better, but he kept getting sicker. So what he did was he started researching on health, and he just removed like everything processed. He started eating everything that was grass fed. He started like just eating like extremely healthy, ridiculously food, and doing everything that he could possible to look after his immune system. And from my mind, I was like, well, that's brilliant. And like in terms of just like people having energy, being healthy, being able to optimize themselves, being able to have the space to like think about things spiritually and get into there. It's like, well, it all starts with just like choosing like what you eat. And like for myself personally, I definitely agree with what you were saying, because like I'm a bodybuilder. I do a 24-hour fast once a week. I have an ice bath and a sauna set up like in my house, and I try to eat like as ancestrally as possible, like all the time. And I have just like this amazing energy, and I feel positive all the time, and things that I want to happen in my life sort of just walk in. Like it's really interesting how it really walks in. So I sort of have this mindset to be like, what's the best that we can do with ourselves in these circumstances. But like a lot of the time it does start from food. And being in Adelaide, there are some shopping centers that like I have been to for myself, and people will have a trolley, and it's filled with 2-liter bottles of Coke. And like I'll be at the shops, and I'll be in the organic section or do the best that I can. I literally, it's just like vegetables, like so many vegetables, and then like some grass-fed or like some organic fish and some like really healthy oils to go there. And every time I'm at the supermarket, compared to like what other people put in, people are like, oh, you eat really healthy for a big guy. I'm like, thank you.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it shouldn't even have the terminology of healthy.
Yeah, true.
It actually just should be, that's what human beings eat.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that is not what we're meant to eat.
I'm curious as well. May I ask a selfish question? Like, what does your diet roughly look like?
Oh, every day is different. Some days we eat 1 meal a day. Some days it's 2. Sometimes it's 3. It changes all the time. Sometimes none.
Yeah.
Yesterday, for instance, we had a chicken liver curry. That was the only meal we ate yesterday. It was beautiful. And my wife and I, we ate that at about 3 o'clock yesterday. Chicken liver curry with some beetroot, some sweet potato in there. And we had this great plant that we put into the garden recently called a mushroom leaf plant that tastes like mushrooms.
Mushroom leaf plant. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, and we did some cauliflower. My wife cooked the cauliflower rice with it, and it was a magical meal.
How did you cook your liver? How do you make your liver taste really good?
You start with really good liver. These were chickens from a husband and wife that live out in their Byron hinterland, and they raise their chickens. It's called Misty Creek Agroforestry, I think it's called Misty Creek. And so they raise their chickens through a rotational philosophy, or a movement philosophy, but they raise them in forest trees because chickens are forest birds. Many people don't realize this, but chickens like to be in the forest.
I never knew that. What? That makes so much sense.
It does make sense. So they like to perch and roost in lower branches in trees,
That's why they're flicking their feet everywhere.
and it probably would have protected them from predators, and it's the best chicken you've ever had. And we purchase it so we can put it into the retreat. So we offer that to our guests, and every guest says this is the best chicken we've ever eaten. And I do we use the Marylands, or we make a broth with the bones. So that's their first adventure. When the guests come, they have a beautiful chicken broth with the best. So good. And then on the Saturday, I think we do a roast chicken leg, but the whole Maryland. So they get the drumstick and the thigh, just roasted, garlic, lemon, a little rosemary from the garden, and the lemons are from the trees, and the garlic they grow, and salt, pepper, full stop. And we cook some greens with it, like silver beet. Just sensational. And they also have the liver and heart, so we purchase them as well. And so last weekend we did the retreat. We did fried chicken livers, southern fried chicken livers. So paleo crumb, cooked in coconut oil. Or actually, we did it with pork lard. We cooked it in pork lard.
Nice.
And it was sensational. So we took some chicken livers home, and that's we had the leftovers yesterday. Yeah. So to answer your question, it's really simple. It's meat and veggies.
Yeah.
And when I say meat, any animal from the land or sea that's been sensibly and consciously either caught, raised, or farmed and slaughtered and butchered, and chemical free or spray free or organic vegetables and fruit. And you can add eggs into that mix, and that's pretty much how we eat every meal. So it'll be some sort of combination of that. Some days it's just meat. Some days it's more vegetables, depending. It depends on the season. It depends on what we've got currently. It depends on how we feel. It depends on how hot it is outside or how cold it is. But I don't really get too caught up in it. It's more that it'll be some sort of meat and some sort of vegetable in some sort of ratio, full stop, cooked with beautiful fat. Today we're cooking sausages from the local butcher, and we're going to smoke them. We've got some bone marrow too. So we're going to have that. We've got some guests coming over, and so smoked sausages. We've got some fish pate we're going to have as well that our friends make in Byron.
Pate. Ooh. So good. I've never had fish pate. I've had a lot of liver pate. Like I soak liver. I try to get like a fresh, like a veal liver, and I'll soak it in like a cold pressed, like raw organic milk for a few hours, and then like I'll saute some other things together, and I'll just get like a fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, blend it all up, and I'm like, well, this is butter that's going on my sourdough for the rest of this week. And every time like I taste it, this tastes so good. One thing that you were speaking about as well, which sort of clicked for me, which I find like quite fantastic, is obviously when you do periods of fasting, that's why I sort of like, you know, the bodybuilding and having some sort of restrictive diet, because you get really in touch with food itself. And I always say to these like my friends, coaching clients, is like food and taste is like literally a drug. Like if you've gone like from like time, like either sustained food, and you make something how you were saying, like, you know, with your fish pate, like my mouth is literally salivating right now. With using like, I haven't used pork lard before, but that sounds like such a good idea to cook some of these things in, and you're using these really high quality ingredients, and like you get a taste of that. You don't want to eat anything else ever again. And it's so mindfully, like you smell the smells. You when you take a bite, you just feel like every second from it moving from your teeth to in your mouth to like swishing around. And as you're swallowing it, you're like, this, like, it doesn't get better than this. Like, this is so good.
I'll go back to a time that I think it was a Current Affair or one of those shows did a hit piece on me, and I'll never forget it because it was such a beautiful moment, because they had the reporter there, and I just love it because he had a bench of food, and it was whole salmon, it was meat, it was eggs, it was herbs, it was vegetables. It just looked amazing.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
And thanks. And the interesting thing was he was standing there with all this bounty of harvest of beautiful food, and he said, this is what Pete Evans promotes, you know, and it's been called dangerous. And he was serious. They got the dietitians on and this to say that eating this is a dangerous way of living for a human being. And I'll never forget it because it's the same thing that's happening now. Over the last 18 months, is the more these journalists and mainstream media speak and try to put forth their narrative, anybody sitting there will just go, that doesn't make any sense. Like anybody watching that show 6, 7, 8 years ago when they were trying to attack me for promoting organic and eating meat and seafood, which deep down, someone watching that would just know, whether they know anything about nutrition, would look at that and go, nah, that looks pretty healthy to me. That looks like food.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It looks better. It looks better than what most people eat.
I'm
Put it in their
salivating
trolley.
right now looking at it. There's something's going on here. I mean, like my body's trying to speak to me.
So I'm grateful for those experiences where people are shown the ridiculousness of somebody's agenda or someone's narrative, because I trust in our common sense, I trust in our humanity, I trust in our intelligence, and it's something that I think where mainstream media is making a huge mistake is misjudging the intelligence of their public or of the population. Same with politicians and health ministers. I do believe they're severely misjudging the intelligence and common sense of human beings, because we know when something smells fishy. We have that intuition of something that isn't right. It's a sense, and there's something definitely not right at the moment going on, and more and more people are smelling it. More and more people are awakened to it, and it's really interesting because, as you said, food can be a great gateway for people to create more conscious awareness, and it is. And there's a spiritual aspect to this as well. I've had the great fortune of interviewing many people over the years. Some have been shamans, some have been neuroscientists. And like I was saying before, the ancient wisdom that is now being proven by modern science, they've known this. They know that if you eat a species appropriate diet, let's just say a human being eating a human appropriate diet, which is basically a paleo, because that's an old style diet that we have tried and tested through our evolutionary history to get to a point where Weston A. Price, as I mentioned before, realized that the peak human being were the indigenous tribes that had the perfect jaw structure, had the perfect teeth, were happy, not depressed, non-anxious, had no heart disease, no cancer, no autism, no Alzheimer's. We got to witness peak human physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual capacity. And I'm so grateful for him and his wife's work to actually document that over decades. So we've seen what is possible for our species. And now we've got the opportunity and the invitation to see within a space of 100 years, 200 years and more of us choosing a path that isn't a species appropriate diet and looking after ourselves like our ancestors used to do. We are given a great opportunity to see the chalk and the cheese, the before and the after. When we look around at the Western population these days, we see 70% of people are overweight and obese. You know, that is not genetics. That is a choice that people have made, right? And belief systems that have been handed down and adopted and instilled in the generations from parents that have, and culture that have decided we're going to veer off from those savages, those tribal people that we know best. You know, it's really like that scientism. So again, when we take a broader view, I love that before and after, because again, common sense, intuition, intelligence would look at that and go, okay, where did we go wrong? What were the choices that human beings have made to get us to this point where cancer is in 1 in 2 people, heart disease is the second leading cause of death, obesity and being overweight is rampant, children autism is rising, and children's birth defects and neurological disorders, anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's, dementia is just autoimmune disease is now not rare. It's actually the norm. And we are in a society where we have been conditioned, most people, to believe that that is our normal state of being. Our default is to be sick and reliant on a system to medicate us, to cut us, to burn us, to irradiate us, to remove parts of our colon, remove parts of our essential organs. And that's considered normal. Yet the simple act of you going shopping and filling your trolley with healthy food is considered obtuse, extreme, ridiculous, a waste of time, laughable. Like what?
I'll spend any amount of money on food, like any amount.
Well,
as part of the good stuff.
The funny thing is, when you eat this way, as we're talking about, you spend less money on food. You spend generally less money on never having to go to a doctor. You are out of that system. You're not on pharmaceuticals. So you're not supporting multinational food companies. You're not supporting the advertising that goes into the mainstream media. Just that one simple act, and it's not an act of rebellion, it's an act of self-love. It's an act of consciously deciding, am I here to evolve or am I here to devolve? Am I here to be sovereign, where I get to choose my own adventure in life, or will I be guided by external forces that think they know better for me in this one incarnation of being a human being? So it's an act of rebellion to eat healthy. It's just an act of self-love and nourishment and just common fucking sense to look after this for as long as possible. Because no one will look after you as good as you can look after yourself. If you are curious about what does this look like. And for anybody listening, they're thinking this is all bullshit or too hard. It is the simplest. It is so simple. It is so simple. It's not complicated. If anyone's out there telling you to weigh carbs or count your carbs, find somebody else that can guide you, because that's bullshit. It is so simple. Like you said before, how do you eat? Like, you eat some of this and some of this in any combination, with any spice, with any herb, trial and error. You be the detective. You know, we've had the great fortune of being able to provide a platform where we shared information through a 10-week program called the Paleo Way many years ago, where 100,000 Australians, pretty much, and New Zealanders, adopted that philosophy for 10 weeks. My intention with that and the people we did it with was do this for 10 weeks. We'll give you the foundational principles, which is pretty simple. I just summed it up in one sentence: eat some of this and some of this. And you'll never have to think about it again, because you will have a habitual nature to eating this way. And it was amazing. For the years that we ran that, and the 100,000 people that adopted it, this many, 0 people reported back to us that they got sicker from doing it. So that would say there was 100% success rate, that they either felt the same, if not felt better. Now, when you look at something like Weight Watchers, for instance, I believe they've got a 3% success rate, give or take. Now, could you imagine any other industry, any other product in the world that only 3 out of 100 worked? Imagine a car manufacturer putting a new car on the road and only 3 out of 100 of them worked. Could you imagine an airline? Could you imagine any business in the world that does that? Yet there's businesses out there, such as in the weight loss or pharmaceutical industries, that offer people a solution for a problem that the individual probably created themselves most of the time. Yet they're not offering the solution for that individual to be able to take ownership of that and improve their life through that. So it's a fascinating thing. I guess where I'm getting to with this is, once we completely own our responsibility over ourselves, then there can no longer be any blame. There can no longer be any excuse. There can no longer be any victim playing the victim. There can no longer be anything other than responsibility and accountability. That is a very difficult pill for people to swallow that have been conditioned to want others to fix them, that have been conditioned through mainstream media to want to blame others for the situation that they find themselves in. And I do believe that we're again being given the opportunity for us to take back that responsibility of our own selves in a huge way at the moment. And that does mean choosing how you want to live your life, what you want to eat, what you want to put into your body, whether it be through food, whether it be through beverage, whether it be through medicine, pharmaceutical, injection, whether it be through what you decide to watch. That's information that you're choosing to bring in.
What to think.
What to listen. Mm-hmm. How are you going to feel about a conversation that you might hear about what's happening in the world? Mm-hmm. Can you remove yourself? Can you detach yourself? Can you offer any guidance if it's asked of you? Can you sit back and just observe and witness and potentially look at a bigger picture and take a big zoom out? I look back at some of these times in human history, such as world wars, and it seems that every generation has to go through some sort of initiation process, some sort of dark night of the soul. Is this ours? How long was it going to go for? Anybody that's ever had a plant medicine or toad medicine ceremony or taken a psychedelic to do work will know that time has very little bearing in those experiences, to the point where time may not exist, or in those experiences you might feel like you've lived or experienced 1,000 lifetimes during that journey, or eternity. And how long is this dark night of the soul, if this is what we're currently going through? How long is this going to play out for? Is it going to magically return to normal in a month's time, in a week's time? Or haven't we even started yet? Have we just taken that medicine now in the last minute and it hasn't even taken effect yet?
Yeah.
And the coming years, we're going to actually go deep into our deepest, darkest fears. Can we navigate through that with an open heart, an open mind, and with trust and acceptance?
Yeah.
When and if society breaks down all around us, this may happen. It may happen sooner than people think. It may not happen. Mm-hmm. Can we at the same time co-create and manifest a more beautiful world, a more beautiful community? Can we co-create and manifest in ourselves and our families greater harmony, greater connection, greater resilience, greater communication? Mm. The choice is ours, individually and collectively. Mm. And my perception at the moment is, it seems like the masses are quite happy going along with being told what to do, how to live their lives. And it's nearly like a child mentality or an abusive relationship, where the abusers are continuing to abuse and the abusees are okay with it. Mm. There will become a point where some individually and collectively people will say no more. Mm-hmm. How quickly will that come? I'm not sure.
Sure. I really like how Friedrich Nietzsche said one of the main parts for people to develop themselves is to overcome themselves. So currently, one of my main mantras or philosophies I always say is my role here is to consistently overcome myself all the time. Dog's so cute. And I think that it's extremely important, as you said, I think to overcome yourself, as you said, I think it's first most important to start loving yourself and taking ownership and control over yourself, because it's extremely easy to be distracted. And as you said, taking responsibility of yourself is quite hard. But I always ask the question, what does responsibility of yourself even look like? And that is, just being conscious, as you said, about every little thing that you say and you do, and you do, and same everything choice that you make in terms of just eating food as well. And it's not just your inputs physically, it's also internally. It's like, what are you like feeding your ego and feeding your consciousness, because that's digesting itself all the time, and it's on its own journey. So yeah, like I think some of those things that you said there were absolutely beautiful. But it's also, I believe that, like, I'm quite romantic about how things are going down, and I believe that there is a lot of fear out there at the moment. But fear leads to, as far as conscious development goes, just out of the book, The History and Origins of Consciousness by Eric Newman, talks about some steps in there, how it's like, well, first you experience fear, then you experience resistance. First you experience attraction. So you get attracted to these things that, I think like me and you are discussing, and things that you're talking about. And it's like, well, it's so simple, right? Just like eat meat and veg and start to say and do good things, right? But first you get attracted to that lifestyle, like, oh, like a fast, like you don't eat for 24 hours, you don't eat for 38 hours, like what's going on here? You get attracted, and then you get fearful, and then people will be fearful, and then they'll experience resistance, and then they won't want to go down the journey and the path that we're doing, because not everyone's currently doing it at the moment. And obviously, as far as obviously you're talking about like the masses going, because we've got advertisements and things and McDonald's everywhere, all of just stuff just coming out, it's easy to go like, well, I'll just grab that, well, I'll just grab that, well, I'll grab that, and that's just experiencing resistance. But where consciousness really develops is when the inner hero of yourself decides to champion against resistance, against fear, and you get some small wins by experiencing these things. Then you become more conscious and aware of them, and then it's like, why haven't I been doing this the entire time? And then like forgiving yourself with that, and then like choosing to be around people that are making these really good decisions, and choosing to experiment with like just buying and eating really good healthy food, and making a change, because obviously there's always resistance to change, and the hero's got to come in to do it, is a beautiful thing. And I'm just being like, not just trusting within, like I trust myself to make the right decisions, but I also try to not even just trust in other people, but just trust in something beyond people and everything else themselves, that eventually people will make the right decisions, because it's, as soon as you start doing it, you just feel so good that you can't, and you're like, you'll have your moment, you'll jump on board, and you'll feel great. And it's happening to a lot of people around me at the moment, and when it does happen, it's another big yes moment.
And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
And my wife and I often say what a trip this is, and every day it's pretty trippy. I was reading something today, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect or anything, because nobody is. We're here to learn, and I get caught up in it, reading stuff. And I was reading something today. They're trying to. They believe that beef and lamb will be outlawed and banned because of climate change in the coming years. It's like that brings up emotion for me. Yeah. It does. I'm like, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard of. But with the power of the media and another agenda of climate change or whatever it is, you can easily see how they've pushed this virus to the point where people are locked down in their houses. You can easily see how all of a sudden they could turn against meat eating with some bogus claim and put all their assets into it, and get some celebrities and some influencers and blah, 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 and health experts, and go down this path. The writing is on the wall that this is coming. And again, if you love to eat meat, then you might want to go into support a farm, a boutique small farm, and help them out, or with your family, get a small block of land if you can, or lease something and start growing something yourself. To understand, because we know. I mean, we featured it in the Magic Pill. We interviewed regenerative farmers. There's a lot of documentaries out there now that have said, again, looking through human history and ecological history, that herbivores are the key. One of the keys, like mycelium networks and everything else, but especially herbivores. We need them to create topsoil. We need it for everything, and to take that out of the equation, it's crazy. But again, I'll let you be curious about that, and you might be able to see some of the writing on the walls. And then once you can see what's potentially coming, then you can, I don't want to use the word counteract, but you can make conscious decisions of, well, am I going to let that play out into my reality?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the mask thing, for instance. I haven't worn a mask for a year and a half. I choose not to live in that reality, and so far so good. Every store that I go into, I smile and I buy my stuff and I leave. It's a very simple mindset that I've so far managed to navigate, because I don't ever really think about it. I'm like, that doesn't, I just flow. And it'll be the same thing with the meat thing. I'll be like, okay, well, I can see that there's a gender out there. Am I going to buy into it, or are there things that I can do now that, will make sure that we've got that into the future? In whatever way, shape, or form. Some people like to prep, some jerky, for instance, that might last a few years or 5 years. Other people like a chest freezer where they could store things in vacuum sealed things and buy a big chest freezer so they've got meat for years. Tin goods, dry goods, all of this stuff, as I mentioned. Or support farmers. So there's more regenerative farmers doing what they're doing. Or raise your own.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing at the moment, and it's a beautiful process. And one cow can feed a family, I believe, for a year.
Yeah, crazy.
One cow, one family, 1 year.
Crazy.
Think about that.
Yeah.
When they start to talk about food shortages in the coming months or years, just remember that saying: one cow, one person, or one family, 1 year. That's all it takes.
Start eating organ meats. Uh-oh.
Well, that's part of the thing, and bone broths and all nose to tail.
Yeah, nose to tail for sure. So I won't keep you too much longer, Pete. So I just want to ask sort of one last question. For people who are sort of at that part of their journey in their life, let's say when they've started to have, some success, or they've started to go through and like either develop themselves or get some cash flow, and they're interested in really starting to invest in themselves to make themselves better. What do you think? What would you encourage people, just as really simply or tangibly, some things that they should, what you would encourage them to start doing?
I think the three words that you said, invest in yourself, is so powerful. A friend of mine, Helen Patteran, she's a naturopath who we've written a couple of books with. Up on stage once, she said this great philosophy. She said, find something that you love to do that doesn't require anybody else, and do it as often as you can. Find something that you love to do that doesn't require anybody else, and do it as often as you can. If you can do that, then I believe that is a very important piece of advice, because it doesn't tell you what to do. Because each and every one of us, I love to go surfing, and I can do that by myself, and I love doing it by myself. I also love doing it with my family or friends, but it's one thing that I can do by myself. Some people like gardening, some people like riding a horse, some people like dancing, some people like doing art, some people like writing something, poetry, some people, the list goes on and on and on. We all have these different things, and if we can remember through to our childhood, what are those things that really brought us massive amounts of joy? Riding your bike, whatever it is, playing in the streams or the creeks or the ocean. And it doesn't need to be one thing. Here's the key. Once we start to cultivate the things that we love to do and do them as often as possible, cooking, for instance.
I love cooking.
How could you not love cooking?
How could you not love cooking?
It's just a mental thing, because we've been conditioned from TV series through our parents that it's a chore. that it's something that we just need to do it.
We
If
get
you look through back through again human history, hunting, gathering, cooking, eating,
it's a beautiful
storytelling,
ceremony, right?
that's again, it was the fundamentals of who we are. It was how knowledge was shared. It was delicious. Eating this way is the most delicious way you'll ever eat in your life. I promise you that. I promise you that. I promise you that. When you learn to cook this food, it'll be the most enjoyable process. As one of the things that you can do often that bring you joy, that you don't rely on anybody else, but you can do it as a couple, you can do it as a family, you can do it with friends, but you can do it individually. So that's all I'd say is cultivate those things that you love to do singularly by yourself or individually, and then collectively, because that's the next part is what can we do collectively? And it might be an extension of those things. You know, what I believe is going to happen in the coming years is there will be a movement as such. It may be something completely left of field from our current political system or political parties, but there will be a movement coming through of people, different walks of life, that will say, you know what, there's a better way we can go about this. There's a better way we can look after each other through how we eat, how we communicate, how we share knowledge. Where do we get that knowledge from? It's coming. It's already here. We're seeing no matter how much they try to suppress it and censor it, it always finds an outlet. And we're witnessing that right now. Social media platforms are moving in the face of censorship, seeing new media outlets emerging in the face of one narrative being pushed out there. We're seeing more and more individuals and groups standing up around the world saying, no more, we're not having it, as David Icke would say, you know, and it's a really beautiful time in human history. Scary, exciting, positive, at the same time, just crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, it's definitely not boring.
Oh, that's for sure.
You know, and how do we get to that point? Going back to your question, what should we do? I never like to say what we should do, but what you might consider is getting your physical being and spiritual being into a place of being grounded through some sort of practice, and the groundedness can come from physical activity, bodybuilding like yourself, or movement, yoga, swimming, surfing, riding a bike, whatever it may be. It can come through, again, gardening, being on the land, hiking, bushwalking is fantastic, swimming in the ocean. And you may like to employ some sort of I don't want to use the word spiritual because people take it the wrong way, but some sort of practice that gives you space. And that could be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be a flow state of some of those activities like dancing. It could be having a fire every day in your backyard and meditating on that. You know, it can be something very different for everybody. And what I'd say is use that curious spark to see what works for you. For me, I have a list of things, but one of the things lately that I love is making a fire. You know, something so people are like, well, what does making a fire do? I'm like, well, if you think back again through evolutionary history, we would have been around a fire every single day or of our life in our villages, in our tribes, in our small little groups.
Fire was life.
Fire was life. It was cooking. It was warmth. It was storytelling. It was meditation. It was contemplation. And I love it because for me, I call it fire medicine because I can look at it and it helps me contemplate. It helps me release stuff into it. And yeah, powerful stuff. So don't think it's too woo-woo to light a sensible fire, in a fire pit, and you can cook with it, or you can just use it as a tool.
Yeah. No, I couldn't believe that anymore. And that happened literally, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I went to the Flinders Ranges and had a week, like 2 weeks that were just so ridiculously busy. And we set out a fire one of the nights that we got there, and like all of my stress just like melted away. And one of my friends to me was like, fire is medicine, like for sure. And like, shout out Glenn. So thanks for that. So when he said that, I was like, well, 100%. And as we were just staring and looking into it with like the orange hue and the orange glow, obviously it's not sunlight, it's not blue light, it's not affecting sleep, it's not suppressing melatonin. It was cold outside, but the sleep that we had, the sleep that I had that night was one of the best sleeps that I've ever had. And I was super restful, and I wasn't thinking about what was happening next. I wasn't thinking about what I had to do. It was sort of like my whole body just went, into this mode. I'm like, man, I got to do this more often.
Yeah, we go back. I'll finish off by saying, we go back to those, the four elements. We've got fire, we've got earth, we've got air and water. Mm-hmm. And if we can air through breath work, water through immersion, cold water if you choose, or hot water, having a nice bath of a night time. We have air, like sauna as well, is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then we've got earth, gardening, connection, playing with your, like we did this morning. We played outside, and then you've got the fire, as we mentioned, and earth for food, water from beverage. It's so simple.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, I think it's a beautiful thing as well. So Pete, I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and like putting out like all of these like good messages. I mean, it's just old school, simple stuff that we're supposed to be doing, but you're championing for it. And like, thank you for doing that. Also, I love how you've sort of really found yourself, and you found your own self-love, and like you found your path and your own hero's journey, and you've just been sprinting down it and then cultivating it and like sort of making it its own like creative artist's curious journey. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I should just finish by saying, what I was saying before about pharmaceuticals and things is, and I've mentioned it before in many podcasts, I'm a big fan of modern medicine and ancient medicine or natural therapies. And I think they both need to coexist.
Agreed.
We shouldn't have one without the other, because that would just be, immature. Yeah. So there's a time and a place for modern medicine. There's a time and a place for ancient wisdom and natural therapies. And perhaps there's a time and a place for all of it to work harmoniously. Yeah. And I think we're going to probably see more of that in the future, as potentially, if there's two camps, open up to more and just being open. So I just wanted to finish that, because I don't want people to think that I'm anti-medicine.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same with you. Medicine is definitely needed where it's needed. I agree. And I just think, shining light onto natural therapies, as you're saying, like, you think they're a little bit woohoo, but it's like, sometimes it's like, well, they are immune system building, so we can use those. And when we have a crisis, we have the most amazing medicine. And like, especially in Australia, right? Care for those things.
And your products are great, mate. I had a look at them, and I look forward to trying them out. Like, really nice recipes.
Yeah, if you like them, I'll send you a pack of some stuff. You just send me details, I'll send you a big pack.
Awesome, mate.
I'd love for you to go see those. Yeah,
we'd love that. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. I love you all, and enjoy the adventure.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To learn more, go to eternumlabs.com.au.